Hi, everybody, and welcome to CloudSec 2021. I'm here with Fiona Griffin, and my name's Mick McCluney. I'm the tech leader across Australia and New Zealand for Trend Micro. Fiona, how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you, Mick.
I'm glad to have you with me today, Fiona. And Fiona, what do you do?
Yeah, I'm a cloud solution architect for Trend Micro, based in Sydney.
Fantastic. Thanks, Fiona. So today we're going to just talk about who's doing what in the cloud, or if you like, a CISO view of cloud posture tools and what that can give you. So first of all, let's just start by talking a bit about cloud development or cloud migration and doing things in the cloud. What we're seeing, and Fiona or possibly back me up on this, is that clouds quickly become very complex environments with multiple accounts, multiple potentially clouds to control, and they're also very powerful. So you can do in seconds in a cloud what would have taken weeks, on-prem data center, and with that power comes risk. So I think the key thing there is part of the problem is obviously the move to cloud is very rapid. The cloud's very dynamic and many people can do this very quickly. And the key thing around cloud security mistakes being made today is that they generally tend to be configuration mistakes. So one of the key themes for CISOs in this area is you've got on-prem to look at, you've also got cloud to look after. How do you get the visibility you need? Fiona, what's your view on this challenge and what you're seeing in the marketplace today?
Yeah, really, when we are talking to organizations around their cloud security posture, initially the first challenge is just gaining that visibility across their entire cloud footprint and really understanding what infrastructure they have actually running in their account. And a lot of the time, organizations are now expanding out to different cloud providers like AWS, Azure, so operating different regions, different accounts, multi-cloud providers. So initially just getting that visibility and then understanding, what their teams are developing across those environments.
I see. So visibility is really one of the key issues there. How are you going to know if somebody's spun up new cloud accounts or new instances or new services in cloud areas across the world, for instance?
Yeah. So trying to gain that visibility and then looking at how can we embed security and compliance across that then in terms of their cloud infrastructure.
I see. And to break this down, we wanted to know who and what, who's doing what in the cloud. Essentially, that's kind of a CISO view, isn't it? Can I see everything that's going on? So we talked about detective, corrective, and preventative. And I wonder whether you could just talk me through initially, what do you mean by detective? What are we looking at there?
Yeah. So when we talk to organizations around this, we see it as a three-step approach, that being detective, corrective, and preventive. And it comes down to just implementing those guardrails really to ensure your cloud services are built securely. So firstly, when we talk about detective, initially getting that visibility, like I mentioned, across your cloud footprint, but then looking at how you actually building out your cloud infrastructure. What rules do you have in place to identify and highlight misconfigurations as soon as they happen? So this is really looking at those urgent risks, those vulnerabilities, those most critical failures that you need to be aware of, such as if you had a EC2 server open up to the public, or someone leaked your AWS access keys to a public repository where we know there's malicious actors out there who can scan and gain those credentials, gaining access into your AWS account. So in terms of like a CISO perspective, these are things that you would want to be aware of and get notified straight away. So really,
you can have you can kind of have a number of cloud control rules in, and you know immediately when they've been broken, and they could be what we consider extreme risks. For instance, an open server to the world with open RDP, for instance, or an open S3 bucket, things like that.
Yeah, exactly. So you can, never stop malicious actors from attempting to exploit your environment, but you can make it as difficult as possible. So you want to have those rules in place to highlight those potential threats or misconfigurations to your organization that could pose a certain risk.
Great. So to put that in context, that's the classic configuration mistake that could be easily made, that then has could have serious consequences. But as a CISO, you can put in a control rule, an alert, a kind of P0 urgent capability. The tool can report that back to your ticketing system, and you can be made immediately aware of that sort of P0 situation in the cloud.
Yeah, you can look to, I suppose, automate that process to have your development, your security teams aware of those risks. So they are managing them, they're working on them as well. And, CISOs, they're quite concerned about the vulnerability of people, but the overall lack of visibility to monitor for this and fix it before, it becomes a real problem.
Sure. Okay, so that's kind of detective. That's the what's going wrong, possibly who, but it really allows you, it alerts you immediately so you can get into resolution mode very quickly. Now, it may be if you have a set of rules to control how you're going to the cloud and those guardrails you mentioned before, then we could move on to corrective, right? So not only do we see that it's going wrong, but we could perhaps use the tool to auto remediate that issue.
Yeah, exactly. So, as you've identified those misconfigurations, the next step is to look at, when drift does happen, what's your overall remediation process? What policy do you have in place to apply the moment those misconfigurations happen? Do you have some form of auto remediation in place so you can remediate those straight away? And you can also, create alignment. It really comes back to creating that alignment across your security teams, your engineers, your architects to, I suppose, ensure that consistent approach, making sure that you're building out those best practices around your remediation process.
Right, I see. So not only can you could auto remediation could help, but also you need to start to build in best practice. And I think this leads us on to the preventative and continuous improvement and technical debt. So this is about how you get things right in the right place in the first place. Yeah. Shifting left. And tell me how can you help? So we've talked about here's urgent things going wrong. We've talked about the tooling can actually alert you and perhaps put in a playbook to auto remediate. And lastly, how are we going to get better doing the right things right? What's that part?
Yeah, and I believe that this is, one of the most crucial parts and where a lot of organizations are going today and what kind of conversations we have mostly. And it's where the most power lies really in implementing that comprehensive preventative strategy that, wouldn't have such a gateway, such as a gatekeeper approach, but a more enables that innovation and rework. And this is really, shifting security to the left, having that actual preventative control in place, embedded in your DevOps CI/CD pipeline. So ensuring that you're actually scanning for misconfigurations in your infrastructure as a code templates, in your CI/CD process. And just putting up those guardrails. So it's not a gatekeeper approach, ensuring that your DevOps are aware of these changes and they can actually, it can be a part of their process. So it's not like slowing down their development. So the moment something is spun up could cause a misconfiguration, that they're aware and they can develop that back into their DevOps process.
Understand. So actually getting it built right is the key thing. So getting so there's an element to your cloud posture tool that can do template scanning, I presume on CloudFormation or Terraform, and obviously using the cloud in that way as infrastructure as code, so developing things in a repeatable and reliable way, but also scanning those templates before they go live stops you making the mistake in the first place.
Yeah, and it's more of like a proactive approach, giving feedback to the engineer at the time they write it, whether they're building it out to best practice, making sure that they are configuring their infrastructure to best practice, and it's secure and it's compliant, that they're not making any mistakes in there.
So to put that in context, you'll never have an EC2 instance go live with SSH keys open to the world, because you'll never be allowed to build it in your infrastructure as code. It'll never get there, right? Ideally. Yeah, perfect. Yeah. So I think in terms of the takeaways then at a CISO's level is that we've got this view on alerts or high extreme risk events across the environment, and how you can become aware of those immediately. So that's your am I able to sleep at night type scenario, because you've got visibility of things going wrong, right?
Yeah, exactly. So to summarize, detective, they're the rules that you apply to ensure that you're building out a best practice, and then corrective controls help mitigate an issue once it has arrived, such as auto remediation. And then the last piece of that is around preventative controls to keep an error from occurring. That's a continuous process, and that's when we talk about shifting security to the left.
So fantastic. So we're going to build out to best practice, we're going to correct what's wrong, and I suppose there's this other element to cloud posture tools that give you compliance scores. So the final bit I guess I wanted to talk to you about was, over time you want to measure your security and trend it to make sure you're heading in the right direction. Are you getting the right things right? Are you making less mistakes? So this would tend to be compliance scores. So in the posture tooling, we have compliance scores against compliance frameworks such as NIST or CIS or APRA 234. So you can measure your performance over time, right? And make sure you're getting things right. Yeah,
exactly. So you can, first of all, you get a visibility into your overall compliance score, which gives you an overall indication of what that looks like across your entire cloud footprint. From a security, compliance, architectural practice, and then you can track that over time. Measure it to make sure that that you're improving, or it's staying in a consistent approach, and then you can map your infrastructure against all of the well-known industry standards and compliance frameworks. So when it comes to audit time, that you have that on-demand report ready to go, and mapping to each control within that standard or framework.
Right. So it's going to give you the tool for audits, but it's also going to measure your security maturity over time. And I think obviously it may, if you're tracking your data correctly, then it's going to tell you perhaps where things can be improved and support investment in, things to improve perhaps your DevSecOps pipeline. So people or process to help you get the right things right again, shifting left. I guess that was a view you could get from the reporting and the data.
Yeah, and also like driving that change back into development teams. Once building those guardrails around misconfigurations and ensuring your security teams are aware of that, so that consistent alignment and also the continuous compliance is a huge part of that.
Yeah, so I suppose as the tool can see everything, then you can get that consistent alignment between your development teams, your operational teams, and your security teams through the one visibility tool, right?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, look, Fiona, it's been a real pleasure to talk to you today. I hope that's been handy and useful for giving you an overview of how a cloud posture tool can help you get the visibility you need, improve your security posture, and improve the way in which you do things in the cloud.